Sarah Martinez had always believed her biggest workplace drama would involve someone stealing her lunch from the office refrigerator. She never imagined that a simple coffee break would turn her ordinary Tuesday morning into the most extraordinary day of her life. The accounting firm of Peterson and Associates occupied 3 floors of a glass building downtown. Sarah worked on the second floor, surrounded by beige cubicles and the constant hum of computers. She had been there for 2 years, processing invoices and managing spreadsheets with the same routine precision that governed every aspect of her life. Wake up at 6:30, shower, coffee, drive to work, 8 hours of numbers, drive home, dinner, television, sleep. Repeat. That morning started like any other. Sarah arrived at 7:45, 15 minutes early as always. She settled into her cubicle, turned on her computer, and began reviewing the stack of purchase orders waiting on her desk. The morning passed quietly, broken only by the occasional phone call and the soft clicking of keyboards throughout the office. At 10:15, Sarah decided she needed her second cup of coffee. The break room was located at the end of the hallway, a small space with white walls, fluorescent lighting, and a single window overlooking the parking lot. The coffee machine was ancient, but it produced a decent brew that kept the office running. Sarah pushed open the break room door and found it empty except for Janet from Human Resources, who was microwaving leftover pasta. They exchanged polite smiles and morning pleasantries while Sarah reached for her favorite mug, a simple white ceramic cup with a small chip on the handle that she had grown attached to over the months. The coffee maker gurgled to life as Sarah pressed the brew button. She watched the dark liquid drip into her cup, thinking about the quarterly reports that were due by Friday and whether she should work late again tonight. These were the kinds of thoughts that occupied her mind these days, small and manageable concerns that fit neatly into her orderly world. Janet finished heating her lunch and left with a cheerful goodbye. Sarah was alone now, listening to the coffee maker complete its cycle. The break room felt peaceful in its simplicity, a small refuge from the spreadsheets and phone calls that filled her days. She added 2 sugars to her coffee and stirred slowly, watching the steam rise from the surface. The first sip was perfect, hot and strong enough to carry her through the rest of the morning. Sarah leaned against the counter and allowed herself a moment of quiet satisfaction. These small pleasures had become important to her, tiny anchors of enjoyment in days that sometimes felt repetitive and predictable. She was raising the cup for her second sip when the loudspeaker crackled to life. The sound was so sudden and sharp that Sarah nearly dropped her mug. The office building had an intercom system, but she had never heard it used for anything more urgent than announcing when the elevator was out of service. The voice that emerged from the speaker was calm but carried an unmistakable note of authority that made Sarah freeze mid-sip. It was a woman's voice, crisp and professional, speaking with the kind of clarity that suggested serious training and experience. "Captain Serpent, Code Red. Report to command immediately. All units stand by for emergency deployment." Sarah set her coffee cup down on the counter with shaking hands. The break room suddenly felt very small and very quiet. She stared at the speaker mounted high on the wall, a simple white box that had just delivered words that made no sense in the context of an accounting firm. Captain Serpent? Code Red? Command? These were terms that belonged in action movies or military bases, not in an office building where the most exciting event was usually someone bringing donuts to share. Sarah wondered if she had somehow misheard the announcement, if her mind had twisted ordinary words into something dramatic and strange. But the silence that followed felt heavy and expectant, as if the entire building was holding its breath. Sarah realized that the normal sounds of office life had stopped. No keyboards clicking, no phones ringing, no conversations drifting from the cubicles. The sudden quiet was more unsettling than the mysterious announcement itself. Sarah walked to the break room door and peered down the hallway. What she saw made her heart rate spike. Her co-workers were moving with purpose and urgency that she had never witnessed before. People were standing up from their desks, but instead of the usual casual movements of office workers, they moved with military precision. Tom from the IT department walked past the break room doorway, but he looked completely different. Gone was his usual slouched posture and wrinkled shirt. He stood straight and tall, his expression focused and alert. He carried himself like a soldier, not like the quiet tech support guy who usually mumbled about computer problems. Sarah watched in amazement as more of her co-workers moved through the hallway. Linda from customer service strode past with confident steps, her usual friendly smile replaced by a look of intense concentration. Even elderly Mr. Peterson, the firm's senior partner who usually moved slowly and complained about his back, walked by with surprising energy and purpose. The transformation was so complete and so sudden that Sarah wondered if she was experiencing some kind of hallucination. These were the same people she had worked with for 2 years, the same colleagues who discussed weekend plans and complained about traffic. Yet in the span of seconds, they had become something entirely different. Sarah stepped further into the hallway, drawn by curiosity and confusion. She needed to understand what was happening, needed to make sense of this sudden change in her predictable world. The announcement had mentioned Captain Serpent, but she had no idea who that could be. None of her co-workers had ever mentioned military backgrounds or secret identities. As she walked toward the main office area, Sarah noticed other changes that she had somehow missed before. The motivational posters on the walls were still there, but now she saw them differently. The image of an eagle soaring over mountains suddenly looked less like corporate inspiration and more like military symbolism. The office layout, which she had always considered inefficient, now seemed designed for quick movement and clear sightlines. The elevator at the end of the hall was opening, and Sarah watched as several people she didn't recognize emerged. They wore dark clothing and moved with the same purposeful energy as her transformed co-workers. One of them spoke quietly into a small device attached to his collar, using terms that sounded like tactical communications. Sarah pressed herself against the wall, trying to make sense of what she was witnessing. The ordinary accounting firm where she had spent 2 years of her life was revealing itself to be something completely different. The people she thought she knew were demonstrating skills and knowledge that had been perfectly hidden beneath their mundane office personas. Her mind raced through memories, searching for clues she might have missed. Had there been signs? Were there moments when her coworkers had seemed more capable or knowledgeable than their roles suggested? Sarah thought about Tom's unusual expertise with computer systems, how he could fix any problem and seemed to know about networks and security in ways that went far beyond basic IT support. She remembered Linda's languages. Customer service representatives didn't usually speak 4 languages fluently, but Linda did. She had always explained it as a hobby, a love of travel and culture. Now Sarah wondered if there were more practical reasons for such extensive linguistic abilities. The loudspeaker crackled again, and Sarah froze. The same authoritative voice spoke with even greater urgency. All personnel to stations. Operation Nightfall is now active. Civilian protocols in effect immediately. Civilian protocols. The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She was the civilian. Whatever this organization was, whatever was happening in this building that she had thought was simply Peterson and Associates, she was not part of it. She was the outsider, the one person who didn't belong in whatever was unfolding around her. Sarah felt a hand on her shoulder and spun around. Janet from Human Resources stood behind her, but, like everyone else, she had transformed. Her usually warm expression was now serious and professional. She wore a small earpiece and carried what looked like a tactical communication device. "Sarah," Janet said quietly, "I need you to come with me. We're going to keep you safe while we handle this situation." The words were kind, but they confirmed Sarah's worst fears. She really was the only one who didn't know what was happening. She was the only real accountant in a building full of people who had been pretending to be accountants while actually being something else entirely. "I don't understand," Sarah whispered. "What's happening? Who are you people?" Janet's expression softened slightly, showing a glimpse of the friendly co-worker Sarah had known for 2 years. "I know this is confusing. I know it's frightening. But, right now, the most important thing is keeping you safe. Can you trust me enough to come with me?" Sarah looked around the hallway one more time. Her co-workers continued to move with purpose and efficiency that belonged in action movies, not accounting firms. The building itself seemed to be revealing hidden features and capabilities that had been disguised as ordinary office infrastructure. Everything she had believed about her workplace and the people in it was crumbling around her. She thought about her coffee, still sitting on the breakroom counter, probably getting cold. Such a simple thing, getting coffee. Such an ordinary moment that had somehow opened the door to an extraordinary reality that she never could have imagined. The coffee break that was supposed to last 5 minutes had already changed everything she thought she knew about her life. Sarah looked at Janet, at this woman who had seemed like nothing more than a friendly HR representative but was now revealing herself to be part of something much larger and more mysterious. "Okay," Sarah said finally. "I'll come with you. But I need answers. I need to understand what's happening." Janet nodded. "You'll get them. But first, we need to get you somewhere secure. This situation is about to become very complicated, and your safety is our priority." As they walked together toward a part of the building Sarah had never seen before, she couldn't help but wonder who Captain Serpent was and why a code-red emergency had transformed her ordinary Tuesday into something that felt like the beginning of a completely different life. Janet led Sarah through a door marked storage that Sarah had passed hundreds of times without giving it a second thought. But, instead of finding cleaning supplies and office equipment, Sarah discovered a corridor lined with metal walls and equipped with security cameras. The transformation from ordinary office building to something that resembled a military facility was so complete that Sarah began to question her own sanity. The corridor extended much further than the building's layout should have allowed. Fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows on the metallic surfaces, and Sarah could hear the hum of sophisticated ventilation systems that definitely hadn't been part of the original office building. Her footsteps echoed strangely in the space, creating sounds that suggested the walls were much thicker than normal construction would require. "This doesn't make sense," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This hallway can't exist. It would extend past the building's exterior wall." Janet glanced back at her with what might have been approval. "You're observant. That's good. It will serve you well in understanding what you're about to learn." They passed several doors marked with numbers and letters that meant nothing to Sarah. Some had small windows, and she caught glimpses of rooms filled with equipment she couldn't identify. Computer screens displayed information in languages and symbols she didn't recognize. One room contained what looked like tactical gear hanging on specialized racks. The reality of her situation was becoming impossible to ignore. Peterson and Associates was not an accounting firm. The building was not what it appeared to be. The people she had worked with for 2 years were not who they had pretended to be. And she, apparently, was the only person who had been completely unaware of the truth. "How long has this been here?" Sarah asked. "How long have you all been pretending?" "The operation has been in place for 4 years, Janet replied. "You've been here for 2 of those years. We needed legitimate cover, and a functioning accounting firm provided the perfect disguise. Real clients, real work, real financial records. Nothing about Peterson and Associates was fake except our primary purpose." Sarah felt a strange mix of relief and betrayal. Her work had been real, at least. The invoices she had processed, the spreadsheets she had created, the reports she had filed, those hadn't been part of some elaborate deception. But everything else about her understanding of her workplace had been completely wrong. They reached a heavy door marked Command Center, and Janet placed her hand on what looked like an ordinary door handle but was clearly some kind of biometric scanner. The door opened with a soft hiss, revealing a room that belonged in a science fiction movie. The command center was circular, with workstations arranged in concentric rings around a central display screen that showed what appeared to be a map of the city with various colored symbols moving across it. Multiple smaller screens displayed news feeds, satellite imagery, and streams of data that scrolled too quickly for Sarah to read. The technological sophistication was overwhelming, especially compared to the deliberately outdated computers that had been part of the accounting firm's cover. At least 20 people worked at various stations, all wearing headsets and speaking in quiet, professional tones. Sarah recognized several faces. Tom from IT was at a station that definitely involved much more than basic computer support, and Linda from customer service was speaking rapidly in what sounded like 3 different languages during a single conversation. In the center of the room, standing before the main display screen, was a woman Sarah had never seen before. She was tall and elegant, probably in her 40s, with short black hair and commanding presence that seemed to draw attention without effort. She wore a dark blue uniform that looked both professional and practical, and she moved with the kind of confidence that suggested extensive training and experience. "That's Captain Serpent," Janet said quietly. "Her real name is Commander Elena Vasquez. She's been running this operation since it began." Sarah stared at the woman who had been the mysterious voice on the loudspeaker. Captain Serpent looked exactly like someone who belonged in a command center, making tactical decisions and coordinating complex operations. She definitely didn't look like someone who would be hiding in an accounting firm. "What kind of operation?" Sarah asked. "What do you people actually do?" Before Janet could answer, Commander Vasquez noticed their arrival and walked over to meet them. Up close, she was even more impressive, with intelligent dark eyes and an expression that managed to be both serious and reassuring. "MS. Martinez," she said, extending her hand. "I'm Commander Vasquez. I know this situation must be very confusing for you." Sarah shook the offered hand, noting the firm grip and calloused palms that suggested someone who was accustomed to more than desk work. "Confusing doesn't begin to cover it. I thought I worked for an accounting firm. I thought Janet processed insurance claims and Tom fixed computers. I thought Mr. Peterson was a senior partner who complained about his back. Now I find out I've been working in some kind of secret facility, and everyone I know is apparently a spy or a soldier or something." Commander Vasquez smiled slightly. "Actually, Mr. Peterson really does have back problems. That wasn't part of his cover story. But you're right about the rest. We're not spies, exactly, and we're not soldiers in the traditional sense. We're part of a civilian oversight organization that monitors potential threats to national security." "What kind of threats?" Sarah asked. The commander gestured toward the main display screen, where the colored symbols continued to move across the city map. "The kind that require immediate response and absolute discretion. Terrorist cells, foreign intelligence operations, domestic extremist groups, cyber attacks on critical infrastructure. We identify these threats and coordinate with appropriate agencies to neutralize them." Sarah looked around the command center again, seeing it with new understanding. The people at the workstations weren't processing accounting data, they were monitoring communications, analyzing intelligence reports, and tracking suspicious activities throughout the city and beyond. The sophisticated technology wasn't for managing client accounts, it was for protecting national security. "Why here?" Sarah asked. "Why disguise this as an accounting firm?" "Because nobody pays attention to accountants," Commander Vasquez replied with a slight smile. "We needed a base of operations that would allow us to monitor the financial district, maintain legitimate business relationships, and blend into the urban environment. An accounting firm provided perfect cover. We handle real clients, file real taxes, process real financial data. But we also track money laundering operations, identify suspicious financial patterns, and monitor communications from our position in the heart of the business district." The explanation made sense, but Sarah still felt overwhelmed by the implications. "And I was just hired as actual accounting staff? I wasn't supposed to know about any of this?" "That's correct," the commander said. "We needed legitimate accounting expertise to maintain our cover. Your resume was perfect, solid skills, good references, no security clearance or government connections that might raise questions. You were exactly what we needed to complete our disguise." Sarah felt a strange mixture of pride and disappointment. Her skills had been valuable enough to contribute to a national security operation, but only because she was completely ordinary and unaware. She had been the perfect unwitting accomplice. "What changed?" Sarah asked. "Why am I finding out about this now?" Commander Vasquez's expression became more serious. "We're facing an immediate threat that requires us to drop our cover and move to full operational status. Someone has discovered our true purpose and is planning to expose or attack our operation. We couldn't maintain the pretense any longer." On the main screen, Sarah noticed that several of the colored symbols were converging on their location. Are those the people who found out about you? Some of them, the commander confirmed. We've been tracking a sophisticated intelligence operation for several months. They've been identifying and targeting facilities like ours across the country. 3 similar operations have been compromised in the past 2 weeks. Sarah felt a chill of fear. The coffee break that had started as an ordinary moment in an ordinary day had somehow placed her at the center of what appeared to be a very dangerous situation. What happens to me now? I can't exactly go back to processing invoices after learning all of this. That depends on several factors, Commander Vasquez said. The immediate priority is keeping you safe while we deal with the current threat. After that, we'll need to discuss your options. What options? Janet spoke up from beside her. You could be relocated with a new identity, given a generous settlement, and helped to start over somewhere else. Or, if you're interested and if you pass the security screening, you might be offered a position with the organization. Sarah looked around the command center again, watching her former co-workers coordinate what appeared to be a complex security operation. The idea of being part of something this important and sophisticated was both thrilling and terrifying. But the thought of starting over completely, leaving behind everything familiar, was equally daunting. I need to understand more about what's happening right now, Sarah said. You said there's an immediate threat. What exactly are we dealing with? Commander Vasquez walked over to one of the workstations and gestured for Sarah to follow. The screen displayed what looked like surveillance footage from various locations around the city. The organization that discovered us calls itself the Phoenix Syndicate. They're well-funded, technologically sophisticated, and completely ruthless. Their goal is to identify and eliminate government oversight operations like ours. Sarah watched the surveillance feeds, seeing ordinary-looking people in ordinary locations who were apparently part of a dangerous conspiracy. Why would they want to eliminate operations like this? Aren't you trying to protect people? That's exactly why they want to eliminate us, the commander replied. The Phoenix Syndicate profits from the kinds of threats we're designed to prevent. Arms dealing, human trafficking, money laundering, cyber terrorism. Our existence makes their operations more difficult and more dangerous. Tom appeared at Commander Vasquez's shoulder, carrying a tablet displaying technical information. Commander, we're tracking at least 12 operatives in the immediate area. They've positioned themselves to monitor all the building's exits, and we're detecting electronic surveillance equipment aimed at our location. Sarah felt her mouth go dry. They're watching us right now? They've been watching for at least 48 hours, Tom confirmed. But they don't know that we know about them. That gives us a significant tactical advantage. The commander studied the information on Tom's tablet before looking back at Sarah. I'm afraid your coffee break has placed you in the middle of a very dangerous game. The Phoenix Syndicate knows that we've dropped our cover, which means they'll assume that any civilians in the building have been compromised. In their minds, you're no longer an innocent accountant, you're a potential witness who knows too much. Sarah realized that her life had changed permanently in the space of 20 minutes. She could never go back to her simple routine of spreadsheets and coffee breaks. Whether she chose relocation or recruitment, her old life was over. The knowledge she had gained made her a target, and the people she had worked with were the only ones capable of protecting her. She looked around the command center one more time, seeing it now as both a source of safety and a symbol of how completely her world had been transformed. The coffee she had been making in the break room seemed like a memory from someone else's life, a simple pleasure from a time when her biggest concern was quarterly reports. What do you need me to do? Sarah asked, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. Commander Vasquez smiled approvingly. Right now, we need you to stay calm, follow instructions, and trust that we know how to handle situations like this. Later, if you choose to stay with us, we'll teach you how to handle them yourself. The next hour passed in a blur of activity that made Sarah feel like she was watching a movie about her own life. Commander Vasquez assigned her to a workstation where she could observe the operation while staying out of the way. Linda, who Sarah now learned was actually a communications specialist with expertise in 7 languages and advanced encryption protocols, sat beside her to explain what was happening. The Phoenix Syndicate operates in cells, Linda explained, pointing to different colored symbols on Sarah's monitor. Each cell has specific responsibilities and limited knowledge about the overall structure. The red symbols represent surveillance operatives who have been watching our building. The blue symbols are technical specialists who have been trying to hack our communications. The yellow symbols are what we call enforcement operatives. Sarah studied the screen, trying to understand the tactical display. What do enforcement operatives do? Linda's expression grew grim. They eliminate threats to the syndicate's operations. They're the reason we need to be very careful about how we handle this situation. Around them, the command center hummed with controlled urgency. Sarah watched her former co-workers coordinate a complex operation that involved multiple government agencies, sophisticated technology, and careful timing. Tom was managing cybersecurity protocols that went far beyond anything she had imagined possible. Janet was coordinating with law enforcement agencies across the region. Even Mr. Peterson, who she now learned was actually a retired CIA operative, was analyzing intelligence reports with sharp focus. The transformation was so complete that Sarah began to wonder how she had ever believed these people were ordinary office workers. The signs had been there, she realized now. Tom's expertise with any technical problem. Linda's language skills and her uncanny ability to understand complex international news stories. Janet's comprehensive knowledge of regulations and legal procedures. Mr. Peterson's detailed understanding of global economic patterns. They had all been hiding in plain sight, using their real skills and knowledge to maintain perfect cover while serving their true mission. Sarah felt both impressed and slightly betrayed. She had shared coffee breaks and casual conversations with these people for 2 years, never knowing that she was the only one who was exactly what she seemed to be. How do you do it? Sarah asked Linda during a brief quiet moment. How do you live 2 different lives? Linda paused in her monitoring work and looked at Sarah thoughtfully. It's not really 2 different lives. The person you've known for the past 2 years is still me. I really do enjoy crossword puzzles and romantic comedies. I really did worry about your presentation to the Johnson account last month. The friendship we've shared is completely real. But you've been lying about everything important about yourself. I've been protecting information that could put people in danger, Linda corrected gently. There's a difference. I couldn't tell you about my real work, but I could be genuinely happy when you got that promotion or genuinely concerned when you were dealing with your mother's illness. The parts of my life that I could share with you were always authentic. Sarah considered this explanation as she watched the tactical display update with new information. She was beginning to understand that the people she had worked with were not fundamentally different from the colleagues she had thought she knew. They had simply been operating with additional layers of responsibility and secrecy that she was only now beginning to comprehend. Commander Vasquez appeared at Sarah's workstation, carrying a secure tablet that displayed building schematics. Sarah, I need to ask you some questions about your observations over the past few months. You might have noticed things that seemed insignificant at the time but could be important now. Sarah nodded, grateful to have something useful to contribute. What kind of things? Unusual visitors to the building. People who seemed out of place or asked odd questions. Any changes in routine or unexpected events that stood out to you? Sarah thought back through the past several months, trying to remember details that might be relevant. There was a man last month who said he was from the insurance company, but he asked strange questions about our computer systems and how many people worked on each floor. I thought it was odd, but Janet handled it. Linda and Commander Vasquez exchanged glances. Can you describe him? The commander asked. Middle-aged, average height, brown hair. He wore an expensive suit but cheap shoes, which seemed inconsistent. He also knew too much about our building layout for someone who was supposed to be making a routine insurance visit. Excellent observations, Commander Vasquez said approvingly. What else? Sarah continued searching her memory. About 3 weeks ago, there was a woman who claimed to be delivering office supplies to the wrong address. But she spent a lot of time looking around before she left, and I saw her taking pictures with her phone. She said she was documenting the mistake for her company, but that seemed excessive for a simple delivery error. These details are very helpful, the commander said. Your accounting background trained you to notice inconsistencies and pay attention to details. Those skills are more valuable in our line of work than you might realize. Tom approached their workstation with urgent news. Commander, we've identified the Phoenix Syndicate's command vehicle. It's positioned 3 blocks away, disguised as a utility maintenance truck. They're coordinating surveillance and preparing for what appears to be a direct assault on our position. Sarah felt her heart rate spike. The danger that had seemed abstract and distant suddenly became very real. They're going to attack the building? It looks that way, Commander Vasquez confirmed. But we have advantages they don't know about. This building has defensive capabilities that weren't part of the original construction plans. As if to demonstrate the point, panels in the wall slid away to reveal sophisticated communication equipment and tactical displays that had been completely hidden during Sarah's 2 years of normal office work. The transformation from civilian office space to military command center was happening before her eyes, revealing layers of deception and preparation that impressed her even as they frightened her. What's our plan? Linda asked. Commander Vasquez studied the tactical displays before responding. We're going to turn their surveillance operation against them. They've been watching us, but they don't realize that we've been watching them watch us. Tom has been tracking their communications and identifying their operatives. We know their positions, their capabilities, and their planned approach. Sarah watched as the command center staff coordinated with law enforcement agencies and federal task forces. The operation was much larger than just the people in their building. Multiple agencies were working together to address the Phoenix Syndicate threat, using information and analysis provided by Commander Vasquez's team. The Syndicate made a critical error, the commander continued. They assumed that compromising our cover would leave us vulnerable and unprepared. They don't understand that we've been planning for this scenario since the day we established our operation here. On the main display screen, Sarah could see law enforcement units moving into position throughout the surrounding area. The colored symbols representing Phoenix Syndicate operatives were being systematically surrounded and isolated. The hunters were becoming the hunted, and they apparently didn't realize it yet. What about me? Sarah asked. What's my role in all of this? Your role is to stay safe and continue observing, Commander Vasquez replied. But if you choose to join our organization after this crisis is resolved, this experience will serve as an intensive introduction to our work. Sarah realized that she was already making her choice. The fear and confusion she had felt initially were giving way to fascination and determination. These people were protecting their community and their country from serious threats, using skills and dedication that commanded her respect. The work was dangerous and demanding, but it was also important and meaningful in ways that processing invoices could never be. I want to learn, Sarah said. I want to understand how to do what you do. Linda smiled at her response. I hoped you would say that. You have the right combination of intelligence, attention to detail, and courage. Those qualities can be developed into very valuable capabilities with proper training. The tactical situation outside was developing rapidly. Sarah watched as law enforcement teams moved with precision and coordination that suggested extensive planning and preparation. The Phoenix Syndicate operatives were being neutralized one by one, their surveillance positions compromised and their escape routes cut off. How long have you been planning for this? Sarah asked. We've been tracking the Phoenix Syndicate for 8 months, Commander Vasquez explained. We knew they were systematically targeting operations like ours, and we knew it was only a matter of time before they discovered our location. Everything you're seeing now is the result of careful preparation and coordination. Tom announced that they had successfully intercepted the Syndicate's communications and were now monitoring their command frequency. The voices Sarah heard through the speakers sounded increasingly frustrated and confused as their carefully planned operation fell apart around them. They're realizing that they've been outmaneuvered, Linda observed with satisfaction. The surveillance operation they thought was giving them an advantage has actually been feeding us information about their capabilities and intentions. Sarah felt a surge of pride in her colleagues, these people who had hidden their true capabilities for years while maintaining perfect cover as ordinary office workers. They had transformed from accountants and customer service representatives into a sophisticated intelligence team without missing a beat, revealing training and expertise that she was only beginning to appreciate. The main display showed that the last Phoenix Syndicate operatives were being taken into custody. The immediate threat was over, but Sarah understood that this was just one battle in a larger conflict. The syndicate would regroup and try again, and her colleagues would continue their work of identifying and preventing threats to national security. What happens now? Sarah asked as the tactical displays began showing all clear signals from law enforcement units throughout the area. Now we begin the process of establishing a new cover identity for our operation, Commander Vasquez replied. Peterson and Associates will cease to exist, and will become something else entirely. A consulting firm, perhaps, or a market research company. Something that will allow us to maintain our mission while providing new protection for our activities. Sarah looked around the command center, imagining it transformed once again into an ordinary office environment. Will I be part of that new identity? If you choose to be, the commander said. But first, you'll need extensive training and security clearance. The work we do requires skills and knowledge that go far beyond what you've learned as an accountant. Are you prepared for that kind of commitment? Sarah thought about her old life, with its predictable routines and small concerns. Then, she looked at the sophisticated operation that had been hidden beneath the surface of her ordinary workplace, at the dedicated professionals who had risked their lives to protect people who would never know their names or appreciate their sacrifices. The choice was surprisingly easy. Yes, she said. I'm ready to learn whatever you need to teach me. 6 months after the Phoenix Syndicate incident, Sarah stood in the break room of Meridian Consulting Solutions, making her morning coffee with the same careful routine she had always followed. The break room looked remarkably similar to the one at Peterson and Associates, white walls, fluorescent lighting, the same ancient coffee maker that somehow produced decent brew. But everything else about her life had changed completely. The coffee mug in her hands was different now. Instead of plain white ceramic, she carried a black mug with a small eagle emblem that most people would assume was just a patriotic decoration. To Sarah, it represented her successful completion of the most intensive training program she had ever experienced. 6 months of learning skills she never knew existed, studying threats she never knew were real, and developing capabilities that had transformed her from an ordinary accountant into something she was still learning to understand. The other people in the break room were familiar faces with new identities. Tom was now the chief technology officer of a consulting firm, a role that allowed him to maintain sophisticated computer systems while providing legitimate cover for his actual responsibilities. Linda worked in client relations, a position that utilized her language skills and interpersonal abilities while hiding her expertise in intelligence analysis. Janet managed human resources with the same friendly efficiency she had always shown, but now her understanding of personnel security went far beyond normal corporate concerns. Commander Vasquez had become Victoria Chen, the firm's executive director, a role that suited her leadership abilities while allowing her to coordinate operations with the same skill she had demonstrated during the Phoenix Syndicate crisis. Mr. Peterson had officially retired, but he remained as a senior consultant whose decades of experience provided valuable guidance for the team's new mission. Meridian Consulting Solutions provided real business consulting services to legitimate clients throughout the region. Sarah's accounting background had proven invaluable in establishing credible financial systems and developing realistic business practices that would withstand scrutiny. But the firm's true purpose remained the same, identifying and neutralizing threats to national security while maintaining perfect cover as an ordinary business. Sarah's role had evolved far beyond her original accounting responsibilities. She was now a financial intelligence specialist, using her understanding of money flow and financial patterns to track suspicious activities and identify potential threats. The skills that had once helped her balance corporate budgets now enabled her to follow money trails that revealed terrorist funding, money laundering operations, and other criminal activities. The transformation had not been easy. The training program had pushed her physically and mentally in ways she had never experienced. Learning to use advanced surveillance equipment, mastering encryption protocols, understanding threat assessment procedures, and developing situational awareness skills had required dedication and persistence that sometimes left her questioning her decision to join the organization. But the work itself was more rewarding than anything she had ever done. Instead of processing invoices that helped companies manage their expenses, she was now tracking financial transactions that helped prevent attacks on innocent people. Instead of filing reports that satisfied regulatory requirements, she was analyzing patterns that exposed dangerous criminals. The sense of purpose and meaning was unlike anything she had experienced in her previous career. This morning brought a new challenge that would test all of the skills she had learned over the past 6 months. Intelligence reports suggested that a new organization was attempting to recruit former Phoenix Syndicate operatives for an operation targeting government facilities in the region. Sarah's assignment was to analyze financial data that might reveal the funding sources and operational structure of this emerging threat. She carried her coffee to her workstation, which looked like an ordinary business consultant's desk but was equipped with sophisticated analysis software and secure communication systems. The financial data she needed to review was displayed on screens that appeared to show market research reports and client proposals. To anyone observing the office, she would look like a consultant preparing for a routine business presentation. The actual work was far more complex and urgent. Sarah spent the morning analyzing bank transfers, credit card transactions, and investment patterns that might reveal the financial infrastructure supporting the new terrorist organization. The skills she had developed during her accounting career proved invaluable for understanding the subtle patterns and hidden connections that might be invisible to investigators with different backgrounds. By midday, Sarah had identified several suspicious financial flows that seemed to originate from legitimate businesses but followed patterns consistent with money laundering operations. The amounts were small enough to avoid automatic reporting requirements, but the frequency and timing suggested coordination that went beyond normal business activities. Linda appeared at Sarah's workstation with information from her own investigation. "I've been monitoring communications intercepts from the target organization," she said, speaking quietly enough that their conversation would seem like a normal business discussion to any observers. "They're planning something significant for next week, and they're specifically targeting facilities with government connections." Sarah compared Linda's information with her financial analysis and discovered troubling correlations. "The funding patterns I'm seeing suggest they have access to more resources than we initially believed. Someone with significant financial backing is supporting this operation." Tom joined their conversation, carrying a tablet that displayed technical intelligence data. "The cybersecurity aspects are concerning too. They're using encryption protocols and communication methods that suggest professional training and sophisticated support. This isn't an amateur operation." Commander Vasquez, maintaining her Victoria Chen persona, approached their workstations with the casual manner of an executive checking on her staff. "What's our assessment of the threat level?" Sarah reviewed the information they had gathered and felt the familiar combination of excitement and concern that came with identifying a serious threat. "Based on the financial analysis, I believe we're dealing with an organization that has substantial backing and professional capabilities. The funding patterns suggest they're planning multiple operations, not just a single attack." "Recommendations?" the commander asked. "We need to expand our investigation to include the financial institutions and businesses that are facilitating these transactions," Sarah replied. "If we can identify the ultimate source of funding, we might be able to disrupt their entire operational structure." Linda nodded in agreement. The communications intelligence supports Sarah's assessment. They're operating with resources and coordination that require ongoing financial support, not just one-time funding. Tom added his technical perspective. Their cybersecurity capabilities suggest they have access to current technology and training. That level of sophistication requires significant investment and ongoing support. Commander Vasquez considered their assessment before making her decision. "Excellent analysis. Sarah, I want you to coordinate with federal financial intelligence units to expand the investigation. Linda, continue monitoring their communications and try to identify their operational timeline. Tom, work with cybersecurity agencies to track their technical capabilities and identify potential vulnerabilities. Sarah felt a surge of professional satisfaction. 6 months ago, she had been processing routine invoices and wondering about quarterly reports. Now she was coordinating with federal agencies to investigate terrorist financing operations. The transformation was so complete that she sometimes had trouble believing it was real. The afternoon brought new developments that confirmed the seriousness of the threat. Sarah's expanded financial investigation revealed connections to offshore accounts and international money transfers that suggested the organization had global support networks. The scope of the operation was much larger than they had initially realized. Working with federal financial intelligence specialists, Sarah traced funding streams that led to multiple countries and revealed a sophisticated network of front companies and shell organizations. The pattern suggested years of careful planning and substantial financial resources dedicated to establishing operational capabilities within the United States. "This is bigger than we thought," Sarah reported during an emergency briefing with the entire team. "The financial infrastructure they've built could support multiple large-scale operations over an extended period. We're not just dealing with one planned attack, we're looking at the foundation for an ongoing campaign." Commander Vasquez studied the analysis Sarah had prepared, her expression growing more serious as she reviewed the scope of the financial network. "How long would it take to build something like this?" "Based on the earliest transactions I can trace, at least 3 years," Sarah replied. "Maybe longer. They've been very careful to establish legitimate-looking business relationships and maintain low-profile financial activities until recently." The team spent the rest of the afternoon coordinating with multiple government agencies to develop a comprehensive response to the threat. Sarah found herself briefing federal investigators and providing financial analysis that would support law enforcement operations across multiple states. The accountant who had once worried about quarterly reports was now helping coordinate a national security operation. As the day ended, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her to this point. The coffee break that had seemed so ordinary 6 months ago had opened the door to a life she never could have imagined. The work was demanding and sometimes dangerous, but it provided a sense of purpose and accomplishment that made all the challenges worthwhile. She looked around the office that appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary consulting firm but was actually a sophisticated intelligence operation dedicated to protecting innocent people from threats they would never know existed. Her colleagues maintained their cover identities with the same skill they had shown at Peterson and Associates, but now Sarah was part of their mission instead of being protected from it. The coffee mug with the eagle emblem sat on her desk, a reminder of the training and dedication that had prepared her for this work. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new threats to investigate, but Sarah was ready for whatever came next. She had found her place in an organization that served a purpose larger than any individual goal, and she was grateful for the chance encounter with extraordinary circumstances that had changed her life forever. The loudspeaker in the office remained silent now, no longer needed for emergency announcements that would reveal hidden identities and activate secret operations. But Sarah knew that when the next crisis came, she would be ready to respond with the same professionalism and dedication that her colleagues had shown during her introduction to their world. Her transformation from ordinary accountant to financial intelligence specialist was complete, but she understood that it was really just the beginning of a career dedicated to protecting others and serving a cause greater than herself. The coffee break that had started everything was now just a memory, but the life it had made possible continued to unfold with new challenges and opportunities every day.